pleased to be here today, not least because the British Library and the Qatar National Library have enjoyed a highly successful partnership for many years. So it's great to be here today. Today I'm going to talk about the construction programme that we have planned in our northern site. Sorry, I'm just pressing the button and...
You might have to push harder.
Oh, yeah, right, okay. So, yeah, this presentation will look back. I intend to look at some of the challenges around preserving a national collection in terms of the design, in terms of the storage methods, but the key point of my presentation is the importance of flow of collections, flow of people, flow of traffic. Then I'm going to look forward a little bit and look at, in particular, high-density storage. I'm going to talk about how the library and its operation can benefit staff and visitors. And another important aspect of this programme is sustainability and our ambitions for green. Sorry, we've got a temperamental button. Okay. Oh, that's the receiver. Okay, so the British Library, we have two sites. On the right-hand side, we've got our site in central London. This is the site adjacent to St Pancras railway station, where we have the 11 reading rooms, the exhibition halls, the learning spaces. Then 250 miles to the north, we have our operation in just outside of Leeds. And this is the area of my interest because that's where I live, and this is the area I am responsible for. So this will be the focus of today's presentation. I must say, though, that each day we have a delivery service between both sites with a 24-hour service level. But here, this is where the journey started. This is where the journey started in the early 1960s when a gentleman by the name of Donald Urquhart was tasked by the British government to set up a national central lending library for technology and science. And of the many sites he had at his disposal, he selected the one at Boston Spa. Now, Boston Spa is a tiny little village just outside the city of Leeds, and this is the name that was attached to the site. Originally designed for military activities in the 1940s, but Donald Urquhart located this site in 1961 and decided this would be the home for the National Lending Library. And of course, then in 1973, the British Library Act was enacted, and this all became part of the British Library. But why? Why Boston Spa? Libraries are judged according to their size of the collections, but also how they make those collections accessible and add value in ways which Stephen alluded to earlier. This location here in the centre of the country, some might say the centre of the universe, but I would because I'm from Leeds. This location was able to service the needs of the British researcher within 24 hours, and that was his challenge. In the days when everything was physical, that the speed of service had to be within 24 hours. But Donald Urquhart wasn't a librarian. He was an industrialist. He was a great innovator and a pioneer. And when he set up this operation, he didn't design it like a library. Those collections are dispersed not by subject classification, but by alphabet and by date of publication. And the reason he did that, because that date of publication dictated how popular they were going to be. The most recent content was the content that required the highest demand and needed to be accessible for efficiency. So he located this whole operation like an Amazon warehouse. Because it's a big campus, it's 43 acres, wherever collections needed to be conveyed around the campus, he used automation. So this was the technology at his disposal back then in the 1960s. But let's fast forward to today. This is the site today. Many of those buildings dating back to that period are still used to store collections. The second building on the right-hand side is what we call the Urquhart building. This was erected in 1977, named after our founder, Donald Urquhart. It's a big concrete building with 120 kilometres of stock and many of the staffing functions located in there. But it's also a big concrete building, and that's important for what will become obvious later. And then, during the 80s and 90s, new buildings came about, lightweight structures with conventional storage with some environmental control. And then, this is the point that everything changed. A big catalyst of change, that was the introduction of high-density storage. And in 2009, 2010, we introduced what I think I'm safe to say is the very first application of high-density storage, low oxygen in a library application. And then we built another one in 2015. So just looking at those in a little bit more detailed, high-density storage, this, by virtue of its name, means collections are densely packed inside a single space, which makes it cheaper to preserve. It's preserved in a fantastic environment. The relative humidity and the temperature are controlled to tight specifications, and the environment is low oxygen. So that means a flame will not ignite in that repository. Retrieval is all done by robots. The staff do not enter the repository void, and the robots deliver the plastic boxes containing the items to the workstation. On the left-hand side, the first one, our ASB, Additional Storage Building, also called Building 31, because every building has a number, was the very first, and that doubled the storage capacity at Boston Spa with an additional 262 linear kilometres. And then we built a second one in 2015, the National Newspaper Building, which holds this iconic collection of 33 kilometres of newspapers, which I'm told equates to 750 million pages of newspaper print. But why change? Why now? And it's quite simple. We're going to run out of space. In 2026, our physical storage will be completely full. So it's right now that we need to take action. In addition, the buildings, the 1940s buildings that are still storing paper collections are no longer fit for purpose. They're expensive to maintain and the environment is not good. So we presented the case to the British government and they gave us the funding, £95 million in 2019 to fund this construction programme. But when we embarked on this programme, we decided we needed a vision. What is the storage vision? What is the end? What does success look like? And we created this collection storage strategy and predicted or tried to envision where collections should be located according to their demand, their type, their environmental need, their physical size. And from there, we were able to develop the MOVE strategy. But on top of that, we also wanted to create new spaces for our staff, new spaces that are conducive to efficiency and well-being, new spaces that can support hybrid working, because like it or not, it's here to stay. And also new spaces that are efficient, that can co-locate staff who need to be together to work efficiently together. And then finally, one of the other drivers for change was to make the site more inviting for visitors. We don't get lots of visitors, unlike St Pancras, because of the location, but we are the engine of the National Library, and for that reason we want people to come and visit and see what happens. Okay, so when determining what sort of storage to select, it's complicated. There are many options. On the right-hand side, we have traditional stacks. Very easy, very flexible to manage. When demand increases, we can deploy more staff. When there's less demand, and so on. And relatively cheap capital investment, but not so good in terms of environmental benefits because the environment has to suit people, not books. But on the left-hand side, we've got the high density application, a big capital investment, £30 million for one location, but a low operating cost. Only 6 staff need to operate that building. That's 6 staff in the daytime and 6 staff on the night time. And that capacity matches the demand profile, and the building is now nearly full. So that's supporting the reading rooms in London, the document supply, and the interlending. And it also presents a high environmental benefit too. But in between there are different options. There's roller stacks, there's the Harvard style of storage with the conventional high density and forklift trucks. So each application needs to be decided according to each individual need. And for our purposes, the next decision was high density storage. But look at this picture. The site is triangular in shape. All the investment and new capacity have been in the 3 corners of the triangle. What we inadvertently created is disconnected islands. We've got desert islands of storage with big distance between, and that distance requires effort and resource to connect. It's not good for flow, and it's not in accord with Donald Urquhart's original guiding principles. So part of the challenge was to correct that mistake of the past. The original location was the one identified in the dotted circle, but said, no, we can't, that would just perpetuate the same issue. Just because there's space, it's not a reason to build a building in that space. Think about the flow. So further to that review, this is what was decided. So what we have here is the scope of the programme. Firstly, number 1, the big concrete Urquhart building will be refurbished to house and occupy all the staffing functions in one place, all adjacent, co-located to be efficient with beautiful appointed spaces. The carbon footprint just to that building alone is equivalent to 15,000 trees. So for that reason, we decided we didn't want to knock down that building, but to retain it. But build the new building adjacent to it. So that's number 2. The new repository with 225 kilometres of storage space will be located adjacent because those 2 buildings are the buildings with space. And then we'll take the opportunity to landscape the site to make it more green and inviting for staff and visitors. But the next case study I just want to look at in the bottom right-hand side is the newspaper building. The outlying buildings at the corners of the triangle are now full, so they no longer present a challenge. But the newspaper building is quite interesting. So this is what happens now when newspapers are delivered. The delivery truck delivers the newspapers from each of the publisher to the loading dock. The newspapers then are moved across into the main building and they're batched. So each newspaper title has a batch. The Daily Telegraph, the Times, the Daily Mirror, they accumulated into batches. And as you can see on the picture, they're on low storage racks. So people can reach, obviously, but that occupies a very large footprint in prime real estate on the ground floor. They're then moved across the site to the conservation area for a box to be made, a bespoke box to suit each batch. And then eventually they're moved to the newspaper building, loaded, unloaded, into the repository. A long, convoluted stop-start process. What the new process will look like is this. In just one operation, newspapers will be delivered directly to the newspaper building. They will be unloaded and goods received and placed into this new vertical lifting machine. This machine uses height with revolving trays to locate each of the newspaper titles. So it does the same function but on a much smaller footprint. And then the box making machine is located next to that machine. And then once the batch is complete, the box is complete, they move 2 meters into the repository. A single unified operation with conjoined workflows. It's a massive improvement, and we've introduced that this year. So, going back to the program, this is the vision. On the left-hand side, we will have a new state-of-the-art repository which will provide growth capacity to 2045. In the middle picture, we will have beautiful new spaces for staff to work in, to support hybrid working. This picture is the conservation studio, north-facing, overlooking the landscape. But look at the picture on the right-hand side of the middle photograph. This window is allowing the public to look through and study the activities at work. So visitors can come and see, not the collections, but see the National Library at work. And then, of course, we will have the enhanced public spaces with the reading room, the restaurant, the Wi-Fi, and all those wonderful things. Accessible to everyone, of course. So, just looking at that in a little bit more detail. Sorry, temperamental button. Thank you. Thank you. So, this program will deliver a revised storage and logistics strategy. The new storage building on the right-hand side is foregrounded with a logistics hub. Every delivery, every dispatch will come to this single point. All the collections will be triaged and will be directly accessioned, received, catalogued directly into the automated storage building in one continuous just-in-time flow. There'll be no work in progress backlogs, it'll be one continuous flow. The only exception will be collections moving across the avenue into the Urquhart building. These are the only 2 locations now that will serve the needs until 2045. I'm sorry that... I'll just add a loop. Oh, right, we've moved. Gosh. Right, very good. Architecture. I was going to talk about architecture. My visit here has been quite eye-opening in terms of architecture. You have some wonderful architecture here in this city. In my program, the architecture is based on something called this ziggurat, which means, I'm told by architects, means it gets bigger to the top. The Urquhart building was very much designed on those principles, with the horizontal lines getting larger towards the top, and our new repository will emulate those design features. As you can see, this corresponding match across. But an interesting feature with our new building is this shiny patina, this metallic finish. It blends into the landscape, so from a distance it will render itself invisible, which is quite an interesting facet. And on the front of the Urquhart there we have the entrance pavilion, which provides the gateway into the new facility. So I talked earlier about the logistics hub. It's the single point of delivery. It will allow the operation to run just in time and much more efficient and at lower cost. And one of the other challenges or opportunities is to reduce the need for manual conveyance. So any manual trolley, if you like, will be replaced with robots or automated guided vehicles, and these robots will deliver inside the building and outside. So there'll be 2 types of robot doing just that. And these are actually in operation today in newspapers around the world, in libraries around the world. So that will be both a benefit and a visitor attraction. But here is the interesting part, and here is the bit that I love, and that's sustainability. It gives me immense personal pleasure to be able to lead a program that considers sustainability. The green construction, all the new construction will be from renewable materials. Much of the demolition waste will be repurposed and reused on the site. The new repository will be passive. That means no energy is employed in maintaining that environment. Absolutely no energy to heat and cool that storage repository. And the way we do that is because it's so airtight. This is the most airtight specification that's ever been designed. We will also enhance the biodiversity of the site and take the chance to introduce renewable energy and energy efficiency. Here we have the start of that plan. We've installed 4 ground source heat pumps, so they drill into the ground 100 meters to extract hot water to convert to energy. So that's currently in place and being developed. We have solar panels installed on the roof of some of the biggest buildings, replaced much of the lighting in the conventional storage spaces with LED, and the site will benefit from planting 1,000 trees, and much of the benefits you can see in those photographs. But what this graph illustrates here is the CO2 emissions, the carbon footprint. Building 31, the very first, is the left-hand column on that graph, delivered around 320 kilograms of CO2 per meter squared. Whereas the newspaper building halved that, so the output was around 150 kilograms of CO2 per meter squared, but the new building is virtually zero. The very small amount of energy that is deployed to run that building will be offset with planting trees, so the site will be virtually net zero. Okay, and where are we now? We're right in the middle of the interesting part, the challenging part. Of the 550 staff we have, 429 will be displaced when we do the construction work, so then they will need relocating temporarily. Interesting, in the new design, only 375 desks will be available for 550 staff. This is to reflect hybrid working and make the spaces much more flexible. 103 kilometres of collections will be moved either off-site or ingested into the available capacity or moved around to deliver the final vision. It's a hugely, hugely complex task, but the BL staff and contractors are currently on plan to deliver by 2025. So we're right on the cusp of enabling works and beginning to look at starting the construction work early next year, hoping to complete, as I say, by 2025. Okay, and finally, you know, a house isn't a home until it's occupied by people. People doing things. And similar with the program that we've got here, Boston Spa has a long-held tradition of a tight community, and some of the pictures show that, and it's that we want to continue going forward. That spirit of community, that enjoyment, that fun in the workplace is something we want to engender. I love taking children around the operation and look at their interesting faces in that photographs when I show them some digitized images. These are librarians of the future, and it's hopefully we can attract them and keep our long-standing tradition sustained. Thank you.